Okay, so what on earth could possibly connect the music of Johann Sebastian Bach, the art of M.C. Escher, and the mathematics of Kurt Gödel? I know, it sounds like the setup to some kind of impossible riddle, but today we're going to unravel this beautiful, profound idea that literally braids these three geniuses together.
So our story kicks off right here. We're in Potsdam, Germany. The year is 1747. And what you're looking at is an evening concert at the court of King Frederick the Great of Prussia. Now, Frederick wasn't just a king. He was a serious musician, a huge fan of Bach, and he was really into the latest tech of his day, the brand new pianoforte.
And it's at one of these musical nights that we get this just legendary encounter in music history. A showdown, really, between the powerful king and the master composer himself, Johann Sebastian Bach.
The story goes that on this one particular evening, an officer brings the king a list of people who've just arrived in the city. When the king sees the name Bach, he gets all excited, immediately puts down his flute and just says, "Gentlemen, old Bach has come." The concert was over. He had to see the master right then and there.
So Bach gets dragged to the palace, still in his dusty travel clothes, and he's presented with all the king's shiny new pianos. Frederick plays him this theme, a theme he came up with himself, and challenges Bach to improvise a three-part fugue on the spot. And of course, Bach nails it. But the king, he wants to push this genius to the absolute limit, so he asks for something that was considered pretty much impossible, a six-part fugue based on that same theme.
And this is it. This is the actual theme the king played. You don't have to be a musician to tell this thing is tricky. It's got a weird rhythm, it's all over the place with its notes, what musicians call chromatic, which makes it incredibly hard to build a good piece of music around. Bach knew this challenge was kind of like a trap, so when he gets back home to Leipzig, he sits down and perfects his response. He creates this absolute masterpiece called the Musical Offering and sends it to the king, but he hit a little puzzle inside.
It was this thing called an endlessly rising canon. It's a piece of music that seems to climb up in key forever. Each time the melody repeats, it's a little bit higher. You'd expect it to just keep going up and up until it's out of control, right? But here's the magic. Bach built it so that after exactly 6 of these steps up, the music somehow, impossibly, lands right back where it started, just 1 octave higher. This is our first taste of what the author Douglas Hofstadter calls a strange loop. It's a system that just by following its own rules, loops back on itself in a completely unexpected way.
I mean, just think about that paradox for a second. How do you capture an endless process in a finite piece of music? It's like an auditory illusion, right? A loop for your ears. But it turns out this incredible idea has a stunning visual twin.
And this is where the Dutch graphic artist M.C. Escher comes into the picture. He took these impossible, loopy ideas and he actually made them visible.
Just look at Escher's waterfall. The water flows downhill, does its job turning the water wheel, and then somehow ends up right back at the top of the waterfall to start all over again. It's an impossible, perpetual motion machine. And hey, count the turns. It's a 6-step loop, just like the 6 steps in Bach's endlessly rising canon. Wild, right? He did the same thing in ascending and descending. You've got these 2 lines of monks. One group is always climbing, the other is always going down, but they're all stuck on the same impossible staircase. They're not getting any higher or any lower. It's just another perfect, visual, strange loop.
So that's the key, right? Escher lets us see what Bach let us hear. He shows us a finite, closed system that somehow depicts an infinite, unending process. So we've heard the loop, we've seen the loop, now let's get to its deepest, most abstract form. And this brings us to our third master, the logician Kurt Gödel. Back in 1931, he discovered a strange loop hiding in plain sight, right at the very heart of mathematics itself. To get a handle on what Gödel did, we have to start with the old liar's paradox. Think about this sentence. This sentence is false. So, is it true? Well, if it's true, it must be false, like it says. But wait, if it's false, that means it's lying, which would make it true. It's this dizzying one-step logical loop. It refers to itself in just short circuits. So what Gödel did was, frankly, mind-blowing. He figured out a way to translate that verbal paradox into the super strict language of math. First, as you see in step 1, he invented a system to turn every possible mathematical statement into its own unique number. This was huge, because it meant math could now talk about itself using its own numbers and symbols. Then,
And this is the genius part. In steps 2 and 3, he used this code to build a mathematical statement that basically said, this statement cannot be proven. And that, my friends, creates the ultimate logical loop. Think about it. If you prove the statement is true, your system just proved a falsehood, meaning your whole system is broken. But if you can't prove it, then the statement is actually true, which means there are true things out there that your mathematical system can never ever prove. It's incomplete. An inescapable strange loop, right at the core of logic.
Okay, so let's recap. We have an endlessly rising piece of music, an impossible waterfall that powers itself, and a mathematical statement that's true because it's unprovable. What is the deep connection here?
Well, in his amazing book, Douglas Hofstadter is the one who puts it all together. He identified this repeating pattern, this strange loop, as the thread that connects all three, and he gave it this beautiful name, the eternal golden braid, a metaphor for how these three totally different fields of thought are all woven together.
And here it is, laid out plain and simple. You've got Bach, who found the loop in music with his endlessly rising canon. You have Escher, who found it in art with his impossible waterfall. And you have Gödel, who found it in pure logic with his unprovable statement. Three totally different domains, one profound, mind-bending idea, a system that somehow turns back and refers to itself.
This is Hofstadter's own definition. It's all about moving through different levels, like levels of musical keys, or levels of height, or levels of logic, only to suddenly find yourself right back at the beginning. It's an incredible pattern, and we've seen it in art and science, but Hofstadter suggests the most profound example might be hiding in a place that's a lot closer to home.
Just think about it for a second. What is consciousness? What is that feeling of I that you have right now? Your brain is just a complex system of neurons, right? But what happens when that system gets so complex that it can turn back and observe itself, to think about its own thinking? Could that feeling of self be the ultimate strange loop? That is the mind-bending idea at the very heart of the eternal golden braid.